Welcome to the latest printed press, and I'm very happy again for us to be focusing on young professional women in our Turkish Cypriot community today. And I'm very pleased to have Jansev Jemal, who is a senior manager with 10 years experience in working in research and has been involved in politics since the age of 16. Hello, Jansev. Welcome to my program. How are you?
I'm very pleased to be here with you. I'm very well, thank you.
Oh, I'm very pleased to have you on my program as well. I mean, your portfolio is absolutely amazing. So you're going to be inspiring a lot of people tonight on the program. So thank you very much for coming on. First of all, can you just give us a general background as to what you actually do?
Sure. So I work in social research. When I first started out working in research, I was working in market research. So that was involved sort of all kinds of consumer related stuff. It might be sort of mobile phone technology, retail stuff, why you buy the things that you buy. But my job now involves sort of, as I said, social research. A lot of my clients are government departments, and a lot of our projects involve researching and evaluating big government programs to sort of see how well they're doing, where programs need to be sort of made better, what improvements they can make, and so on. So that's my day job on the social research side of things.
Fantastic. And we're going to go more into detail with that later on. But also, can you tell us a little bit about your Cypriot background? Because I always like to do this at the beginning of the program, just so that we can give a little bit of an idea for our, viewers as to what part of Cyprus you're from and what generation you are as well.
Yeah. So my grandparents originally came over. My maternal grandparents came over in the 50s. And my dad's parents came over even earlier than that, I think after the Second World War. They originate from sort of Medic and Lefkoşa. My parents were both born in London, as was I, obviously. That's the Turkish Cypriot background. Yeah, growing up, my parents were involved in sort of various aspects in the Turkish community. So mum was involved with the Turkish Women's Association, and dad was involved with sort of the local Turkish school.
Yeah, which is fantastic, because obviously they were first generation born in this country, and your second generation very much like myself. So really, that's quite important that you're sort of carrying the baton on, really, and you're still in touch with your Turkish Cypriot background, which is really, really important and commendable. Would you be able to give us a little bit of a background as to your education, what sort of types of schools you went to growing up?
Mm-hmm. So I was born and raised in Enfield, and I went to Southgate Secondary School, and then and then I was trying to decide. I was a good all-rounder at school. When it came to sort of university, my parents were very sort of supportive and encouraging. My dad was like, right, he had two girls, and as far as he was concerned, we were going to go and get ourselves an education, and then sort of, we could do what we wanted after that. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to decide what to do, and I was unsure. And one of my teachers said to me, go away over the summer and think about what you want to do with your life. So I did, and I came back in September, and I decided, with that naivety of youth, I wanted to make the world a better place. So I thought, I'll go and study politics. So that's what I ended up going off to study. I went to Essex University, so not far from home, but also sort of far enough that I went and stayed there. And then I did my bachelor's degree, and I got a scholarship to do a master's, and then I got funding to do a PhD in politics. And so I was at Essex all in all for 9 years. And whilst I was at Essex, doing the PhD, I taught for 4 years, which I absolutely loved. I loved teaching. So it was a great opportunity to sort of, explore all kinds of political things from an academic point of view, whilst actually I still stayed involved. So I joined the Labour Party back at home when I was 16. Always stayed involved and came back for elections and campaigning and all kinds of things.
Yeah, so obviously you were very well educated in politics, because I know later on you got involved in politics, and you've been involved in politics for a very, very long time. But what's commendable about that story is that your dad actually supported you into getting an education, because we were talking about this before the program. Unfortunately, in our community with Turkish girls, it is a bit of, well, you know, you educate yourself up to secondary level, and then maybe you get A levels, maybe you don't, and university isn't that important. But it was great to see that your parents actually encourage you to further educate yourself, not only to university level, but to get a master's, which you got a scholarship for, which means obviously you were getting very high grades and one of the top in the country to be able to get scholarships. So that's very commendable. And then you went on to do a PhD. So obviously you're very well read and published now as well in your in your subject. So you know, that's amazing, really, for a Turkish Cypriot girl to do that. Because I don't know, were you one of the first in your family to go to university? Certainly a PhD, I would think.
Yeah, I was the first to go to university for my family. My dad's an only child, and his dad died when he was only 11. So my dad, so it was him and his mum, and he did his schooling, and then he actually left to work, help bring in some money, and then I should have double checked all of this, but he went to night school, I think, and got some qualifications that way, and sort of worked his way up, basically. And I mean, I'm, you know, ever so proud of my dad. He's a HR consultant, and you had Yusuf on, I think, a couple of weeks ago, that was such an inspirational talk with Yusuf. And I would encourage sort of, you know, all young Turkish people to watch that talk back, especially boys. Because I think our community, we need sort of strong role models, both male and female. And it's very funny because, I mean, a lot of the older generation, Dad could never explain to them what a HR consultant does. So the easiest way was, everyone thought he worked with computers. And so some of the older generation went to their graves thinking my dad works with computers, when actually he was a HR consultant. But no, he was very determined that his two daughters were going to get themselves an education, be able to stand on their own 2 feet, and make a way in life.
And I think that's so important. And in a sense, we've sort of lost that now. I feel like we're going backwards a little bit with that, you know, because it is very important for a woman to stand on her own 2 feet, and she can still have a family, no doubt about that. But in a partnership as well, if you can stand on your own 2 feet, that makes for a better relationship anyway. You gain respect within that relationship and with each other, and you support each other. So I don't see any harm in any woman getting an education, certainly. And I do feel like that is getting lost a little bit, and I think we need to make more of a point of that. And the fact is that you had your dad encourage you, you know, a male Turkish Cypriot who was first generation, born in this country. So obviously he had very parents from Cyprus, and he was thinking in this way. So, you know, those new generations now that are bringing up daughters, those young Turkish Cypriot men out there, this is a strong message to them that this is what they need to do. They need to bring up strong, independent women, because, you know, it's been amazing, all the things that you've done. And I do think it's the backbone of having a solid family background and people supporting you from the start. We've got a lot of comments coming in already. Honor has said salam. Gulnil has put, did you face any difficulties being a woman, as well as being Turkish Cypriot during your time in politics? And we're going to go into what you actually did in politics, because you've done an array of things. But was it difficult as a woman, especially a Turkish Cypriot woman?
No, not really. What I would say is, I mean, I was asked to speak on a panel about women in politics going back a few years ago, and on the back of that, I wrote a piece that my job then published about women in politics. And one of the things that because they were asking me to reflect on what impact women in politics has, and what was my experience like going through the selection process. Was it tough? Was it difficult? What challenges did I face? The selection process was difficult and it was tough. And one of the things that, you know, people have always said about me is, oh, you're really soft, Jansev, you're really soft. It drives my family crazy. My friends at university, when I was leaving after 9 years, were like, we're worried about you going off into the big wide world because you're just too nice and you're too soft. And for that reason, I did find the selection process going through that really tough. The reality is it's tough for anybody, men and women. In terms of women, if you're a softie like me, it is even harder. But what I would say is that the support that I had through that process was absolutely amazing. And that support came from, I have to say, it came from mostly men in the Labour Party who had known me. So I'd been involved with the Labour Party for over 10 years before standing for selection. And it was from guys who had known me sort of 5 years, 10 years, and said, Jansev, you're fantastic, and you should, be going through this. And they got me through it. So, there were times that I thought about walking away, and they're like, nope, they pushed me, they encouraged me, they supported me. And they were absolutely brilliant.
Okay, so you're saying actually that if you prove, I mean, because we're going to go through how you developed your career and how you got into politics, but you've already said you were in politics for 10 years. So really the message out there is if you want to get into politics, you need to put in the hard graft. You need to be a little bit thick-skinned and know that it's for the long term. It's not something that you can just dip in and out of because there's a long process. I mean, Naima's just put great program, Ayşen. Lovely to get to know Jansev. Wishing you both a lot of success. Yashar's put merhaba. Mujgan has put it's hard for women everywhere. That's true. And Mujgan's put I've toughened up, which has gave me respect. So for everyone watching now, tell us, how did you develop your career? How did you actually get into politics? What were the steps?
In my case, I mean, so I developed an interest when I was at school. I was doing my A-levels and we had mock elections. It was general election year. We had mock elections and I got involved and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed sort of, debating issues and, thinking about sort of policy-wise what we should be doing, what are the problems, facing us and how do we tackle them. I met the Labour Party candidate at the time. We're going back a long time, right? We're going back to 1997. And the Labour candidate in Enfield Southgate, which was my home seat, was Stephen Twigg, who some people might remember. Stephen was not expected to win in Enfield Southgate as a Labour MP, but he got in unexpectedly. And he became a very good friend and he was very supportive, very encouraging. And I ended up joining the Labour Party after the election that year. I got involved. I remember they had a new members evening. And because I was very young still and I wasn't sort of used to going off on my own and doing that kind of thing, I remember my mum came with me to that new members evening. And so they started to get to know my family and my mum sort of got to meet some of the people that I would be mixing with. I made some amazing friends. And that's the thing, politics is a strange world, right? And you will meet all kinds of people. Some people, you would never otherwise meet. People that are similar to you, people that are very different to you. And I've met some amazing people who've been in my life, for over 20 years now. So I just got involved. I stood, I got encouraged to stand for things like the executive committee, initially as a youth member representative and then later on as a policy officer. I was secretary at one point and I just really enjoyed it. I loved campaigning. I loved election time. Election days are always a big buzz. It was
So do you think this molded you as an individual? Did it sort of change your character being involved in politics? Did it toughen you up?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to come out of this process tougher. I think what I would also say though is that it never changes your inherent values and how you are, and I think age and experience generally sort of, we all grow with age and experience. But definitely it gave me the experience. So when I was encouraged to stand for council. This was going back to 2012. So the process, I was a councillor between 2014 and 2018. I was encouraged by our then Labour Party organiser, who I'd gotten to know, to stand. And I went through 3 selection meetings. And what that involves is you prepare like a 2-minute speech, or whatever it is. You stand up, you just tell them who you are, why you want to do this. And then you get asked some questions. You have like 2 minutes, 3 minutes for questions, depending on what the rules are. And I remember the nerves I felt before the first selection meeting that I went through. I remember thinking after that, this was so nerve-wracking. I thought, I'm never putting myself through this again. And I actually withdrew from another one because I found the whole process too stressful. And then a few months went by and another selection came up. And I thought to myself, do I withdraw from the panel? Because your name goes on a panel once you've been through an application process. And I thought, no, don't do anything. You know what? Just let Kismet take its course. And I got shortlisted for the seat. So I had to go and give another speech. And this time round, it was less nerve-wracking. And I thought, okay, I'm about to get into this. And then I had to go through another. I did actually win that one. But another vacancy came up a few months later, and some friends in the party said to me, they had a word and they said, we want to get you on the short list for this seat because it's more winnable, basically. And they said, you're really good and you deserve to get onto that council. So I said, okay. I ended up on the short list. So I went through a third selection process. And what I found each time is that something like standing up and giving speeches, public speaking, gets easier the more that you do it. So yeah, undoubtedly, chairing meetings. I remember, so when I first became a local councillor, I remember chairing my first meeting. I chaired a couple of panels, and the nerves that I felt before chairing my first meeting was really nerve-wracking. But I was working with a fantastic director at the council who was sat next to me and guiding me through the process. And he said, I'm your wingman, I'll never forget. And by the end of my 4 years, chairing meetings, I was quite blasé about it. It's like anything in life. The more you do it, the easier it gets.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've got your mum saying, we are so proud of you, my darling. That's your mum, right?
Yeah.
She was your biggest fan. I mean, she wrote to me personally and told me about you, and what she said just blew me away, really. The things that you've done, it has been amazing. And you're right, it's true. The first time, the second time, but by the third, fourth, once you get into process, knowledge is power, isn't it, really? Once you know how to do something, then it gets easier and easier, and it's very normal to have those nerves. But as a young Cypriot woman, do you think there's more barriers or more support for us in our community, or in our local community, even not just the Turkish Cypriot community, but in our local community? Because I found when you're describing, you say that a lot of the people that supported you were men. How about the women? Are they supporting you out there? What's it like?
Yes. So in terms of people in politics, right, if we're talking about politics specifically, then what I would say is that people go into politics for one of two reasons, really. One, if we're being honest, one is because they want to, with that sentiment that I originally had about making things better, sort of for altruistic reasons, trying to give back something to the community. The other reason is, and we might as well be honest about this, is there are some people go into politics because they want to advance themselves, their careers, or whether, they've got certain ambitions, certain goals. Those kinds of, men and women. So, and those motivations are true of both men and women. So you will get women who, who are in it for the right reasons, those who want to give something back and will help you and support you. And for example, I mean, like when I was going through that tough selection process, I remember that the woman that I turned to for help when I needed someone to talk to was Joanne McCartney, who's now our Deputy Mayor of London, and Enfield and Haringey sort of GLA member. And I'd known Joanne from when I first joined the party, and she's wonderful. She's great at what she does, and a great sort of support to other people.
Yeah.
In terms of the Turkish and Turkish Cypriot councillors that we had already sort of on the council when I was going through selection, I did see a lot. I did see support from them, without doubt. I did. Yeah. I think that in terms of more generally, in terms of the community, I think that I would say that some of the attitudes towards, I think you touched on this earlier on when we were talking, some of the attitudes towards sort of our young girls, we need to be sort of more encouraging and more supportive of them in terms of branching out to whatever it is that they're interested in, whether it's politics or whether it's, you know, TV, film, music, whatever it might be. You know, sort of stepping outside of the traditional, you know, sort of professional expectations of us. Yeah, I mean, I knew girls who weren't allowed to go away to university. And I would encourage all parents, if you've got daughters, if they can go away to university, send them away, right? Because it's about helping them to stand on their own 2 feet. And ultimately, that's what stands them in good stead for later on in life, to go off and do things and try things.
Yeah, definitely. Very good advice. We've got lots of people coming in and saying, Neja, giving you clap hands. Alev Jemal, proud sister moment. So that's your sister. So obviously a close family, you know, supporting you all the way.
Yeah.
And we are proud of you. I mean, this is it, isn't it? It's doing something where people are proud of you. And like you said, someone's integrity, like you said, the reasons why they do something, their motivation is very important. And I think you've, you know, touched upon that. You are successful in politics if your intentions are true. But if it's just to you know, benefit yourself, then I think you will fall down at some point, because people will see through you. And we were talking about this before the program, how there is some very good community groups out there. But you were saying how your mother was involved in a Turkish women's group, but since then you've not really seen that much. So I think as women, we need to join more together, especially within our community, and communicate with each other and know who is doing what out there. Do you think that's something that maybe we need to do? Because you were saying how you noticed how social media during the COVID-19 has been very interesting. You've started to pay more attention to a lot of programs and things on social media, and you felt like the community was coming together. And what would you advise people to do after COVID-19 with that? Because we were just quickly talking about that, weren't we, before the program? And I really like what you had to say about that.
Thanks. Yeah, so I mean, I've been working from home since lockdown, and that opportunity has given me, you know, like a lot of people, you know, we're at home more, and although I've been kept quite busy with work until now, you know, we're all on social media more. It's helping people get through this. And through that, I've sort of started watching, I mean, all your shows, Ayşen, obviously, but sort of a lot of the programs on Eurogenç and other sort of Turkish forums and groups. And it's helped me actually to feel a part of the wider community again. And what in terms of your introduction, what you were just saying, what we need to make sure that after this is all over and things go back to normal, is that we hang on to that and that we don't lose that. So I know that, you know, yeah, you made reference to the Turkish Women's Association. I know we've got sort of a couple of community groups in terms of the young professionals sort of group, and then I think there's a younger group that are coming together. But really, in the 20 years or so since my mum was involved in the TWPA, is that our community organisations, and we've got the TCCA, who I have to say do a fantastic job. But beyond that, as a community, you know, where's the next thing coming from? So I think that I hope that the bonds and the ties that the social media is helping to facilitate at the moment continue afterwards. And something you and I were talking about earlier on, Ayşen, is about sort of maybe like having a Turkish women's networking group, which I think would really help. I think sort of, you know, in terms of women tend to suffer more from confidence issues. It affects both men and women, but women tend to more so to hold back more so. And we need to be thinking about those kinds of things, encouraging more women to come forward.
Definitely, yeah, especially for the interviews. I mean, I'm getting a lot more men coming forward, but less women. So that's a message out there. If there are any successful professional women. And it doesn't have to be like, you know, you don't have to have a great portfolio as well. You could be making a difference in lots of different ways. You could be volunteering. It could be unpaid work. It would still be a success in my eyes. So there's that as well. And you don't have to be educated. But obviously what we're saying, our message is for our new generation to encourage them to be educated, to be university, to go to university and beyond. Obviously, Jansev, you are one of the few women in our community that's got a PhD, for example. Not only have you gotten a degree, but you got a master's. You actually gained a scholarship, which meant that you got very high grades, obviously, to be able to do that. And then you went on and became a specialist in your given subject, which is politics, and you did a PhD. And then you did 10 years within politics before you became a councillor as well. So, I mean, these things aren't easy. You've got to have that grit within you and perseverance, like you said, to carry on, because nothing is easy in life. And I think that's a very strong message that you're giving off to our youngsters. I mean, advice to our youth out there, what would you say to them?
So in terms of what advice I'd give to young people, these are, you know, I can't stress the importance of education, right? And although also what I do want to stress is that whether you're academic, like I was, or whether it's a vocational path you choose to follow, you know, both are equally important. Make sure that you've got a good basis, whether it is the academic route or the vocational, you know, get something under your belt so that, you know, it'll stand you in good stead for later on in life. Good communication skills, right? So there's a few things I've picked out which are just important to, you know, professional. Whenever if we're talking about sort of, you know, being successful in a career one day, it doesn't matter what that career is. You know, good communication skills are really important. And in order to develop that, you know, it's really simple. Observe the world around you. You learn so much just by observation. And then the other thing is listen. You know, if you're talking to somebody, listen to what they have to say. You should, you know, if you're in a conversation, you need to listen as much as you talk. It's a two-way process. But then what I would also say is have the confidence in yourself, having listened to, you know, whoever's talking and however many opinions have been expressed, have the confidence to make your own mind up and to express your views, right? Don't hold back. Be open-minded, right? This is, I think, one of the biggest things that life has taught me is be open-minded, because you never know what's around the corner. And every time I think that I've sort of got things sussed, you know, I feel like, you know, I get thrown a curveball and I'm like, oh, well, I didn't see that coming. I didn't expect this, or I didn't expect that. And just be prepared for the unexpected, and whatever it is, embrace it, right? So be open-minded. Yeah, avoid bubbles, right? And what I mean by that is, you know, I don't know if people have heard the phrase, but people talk about social media bubbles. So we follow people, you know, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever it is, people that we like and that we agree with. But don't just talk to and listen to the people that you know you agree with, right? Have your views and your opinions challenged. And what I would also say is, going back to the culture thing, our culture, be proud of our culture, but then don't forget that there is a whole world out there, right? And we have so much to learn from that world out there, and by engaging with it, it enriches us as individuals, but by taking that back to our community, it enriches the community as well. So yeah, be proud of our culture, and yeah, but engage at the same time with the wider world out there.
I really like the fact that you said, number one, listen. Unfortunately, in our Turkish Cypriot community, that is something that we're lacking. I'm telling you, I'll say it out there, and people can challenge me about this, but we love to hear the sound of our voices, but we don't actually listen to the other side. And I think that is, wow, that is, like, honestly, the most simplest thing, but like genius, what you've just said. It's absolute genius.
Observe, listen, right? And then talk. Observe, listen, and then talk.
Yeah, observe and listen to the person opposite you. We have this thing, this idea that, oh, the person opposite us doesn't know as much as we do. And I think that's such a big mistake. with anybody to do that. You need to understand that the person in front of you also has knowledge and experience, and it's good to listen. And I love the other point that you made about, and I do this actually, so I'm going to take your advice, is I follow people that I agree with on social media or in the news, or certain books that I read. It's always people that I agree with. I actually don't research or investigate people that I don't agree with. And you're right, it's good to get that opposite viewpoint to then confirm your views, or maybe change your mind about certain things. So I think that's really, really important. And I suppose that's about being well read, isn't it? And that's another thing for our youngsters, isn't it, to be always reading. I think that will help them in their education. If you have a good reading age, then you're more likely to be successful in exams. So I think all of those pieces of advice, Jansev, are just spot on. Honestly, listening, reflecting, and also, thinking outside the box. And you're right, not being scared of the unexpected. I mean, when COVID-19 came, I was petrified. I'd be honest, for about a good week, I literally cocooned myself and was very, very scared of what was to happen. But at the end of the day, it was out of our control, and it was completely and utterly unexpected. But of course, awful things have happened. Lots of people have passed away and gotten very, very ill, especially within our Turkish Cypriot community and the Cypriot community in general. But at the same time, look, like you said, we've come together as well. Social media has become a more healthier platform, I think, since the COVID-19 times. We've got lots of comments, lots of people supporting you, Jansev. Sonia has put, yes, Jansev, so proud of you, hon. And then Tanyel has put, Jansev is definitely a positive role model in our community and a lovely soul inside and out. Turkish women should all be proud of each other and celebrate each other more often for all of our achievements. Yes, and this is something we talked about, isn't it? Like you were saying, men were supportive of you. There's this stereotypical view that men stop us from doing what we want, but actually sometimes it's women that stop us from doing what you... I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add to that. What you'd like to see us women do. I know you talked about the community group, but also just generally supporting each other.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, sort of, you get various on social media, those memes or sort of positive motivational images. And so one of my favorites in terms of women in particular is be the woman who fixes another woman's crown without telling the world that it was crooked. Right. Yeah. That's how we need to be with each other. Right. I can't stress that enough. It's just, we have to be there for each other. And for example, when I was a local councillor, I was doing that on top of my day job. Right. So I would often get out of work and I'd race off to the council, the civic centre for council meetings in the evenings. Then I'd have stuff on at the weekends. I'd have surgeries, or I might be going to a meeting or a conference or whatever it might be. Right. I remember I came home in between two things. I'd been out all day campaigning, and then I was going off to an event in the evening. And my mum had been around in between. She'd gone through my wash basket. She'd put the washing on and she'd hung it out to dry for me as well. And it's just, it could be something like that, right? Which means that helps me to do everything that I was trying to get done. So whether it's, helping somebody with a job application, or sort of preparing for an interview, or something as simple as your mum sort of helping you out in that way, we need to help each other more.
Yeah, definitely. I love that story. My parents are exactly the same. While I work, they come, they bring food for my children. They do my washing. And my mother-in-law, they do my washing. They clean my house. Because the basic, you just lose track of time. Your energy levels dip, and it's just that background support. They don't have to say I support you. It's just a little action, a little bit of kindness goes such a long way. There are lots of times where I don't agree with like my parents, for example, with my mum or my mother-in-law or whatever. But you know what? You always know that they're there behind you, supporting you. And I think that's just so, so important. And I think we just need to generally do that as a community with each other as well. You know, like you said, just that little bit. I mean, like all these comments that are coming in, this is amazing. I mean, Ayşen has put inspiration, influence, experience. As a person, Jansev is self-motivated, plus an amazing, caring, adventurous individual. So not only, Jansev, it's the fact that you have done so much in your professional and political career, but you're a very kind person as well. And I think that's what's important. That's what's coming through again and again as we're going through this program, is the fact that you have got integrity and that you're a very kind human being. And I think that's another very important message to give out to our youngsters. You know, that kindness takes you a long way. You know, manners takes you a long way. To be good will open doors, won't it? What is your philosophy in life? Because a lot of people are saying that you're very kind-hearted. So what is it that you could say to our audience? What could you do to be able to be that sort of person?
I think that's a nice sort of segue in terms of the whole kindness thing, because I think in terms of philosophy, I generally believe that, you know, you get back in life what you give out, right? So you know, I started out, I decided to study politics because I wanted to make the world a better place. You know what, politics has taught me that politics is not always the best way of trying to make that sort of, but what life has taught me is that we each of us can all make a difference by every day just thinking, what have I done today to help somebody out or to make a positive difference to someone else's life? So yeah, you know, it's like that whole sort of treat others how you would, you know, sort of want to be treated. In terms of general philosophy in life, if I was sort of looking back and sort of talking to my younger self, I would say to my younger self, believe in yourself more, have confidence. In my 20s, despite everything that I've told you, Ayşen, I lacked confidence in my 20s. I touched on it earlier, a lot of women do, and often it's the women most who shouldn't have reason to doubt themselves, can often doubt themselves the most. Believe in yourself. It was only sort of the summer that I turned 30, I remember I gave myself a good talking to, and I thought, you're gonna ease up on yourself, because you know what, you're all right. So believe in yourself, have confidence, positivity. Right, it's difficult in life. Sometimes life gets difficult, and I know life can make it difficult to stay positive the whole time. But we have to try, because that's the best way of getting through life. You know, if something bad happens, try to find the silver lining in the cloud. And you know, when things get tough, you know, surround yourself with sort of those people who you can have a chat to, who will pick yourself up. You know, whether it's a female friend. You know, I've got a director at work, Claire Johnson, who, you know, I've had a stressful project on this last year, and every time, you know, I got wobbly, I would speak to Claire, and I would always feel better after talking to her. So try and stay positive through life. And Kismet, I believe very much in Kismet, and everything happens for a reason. The good things are good, you know, the bad things are there to try us. We learn from them, we get stronger from them. Other things that I would say, take ownership of what happens in your life. Right, so the good and the bad, right? Don't go, if things haven't gone right, don't go blaming other people, right? Especially as adults, right? We are formed by the experiences that we have growing up, but as adults, we have power and control to change how we think about something, or to change what we do, or how we behave. Right, so to go back sort of a few years, in my mid-30s, you know, I was working the whole time, you know, and I just, that was my life, and I thought, okay, I needed to get some balance back in my life. And I sat down New Year's Eve, and I made a bunch of New Year's resolutions. And do you know what, Ayşen? I've still got the piece of paper here.
Yeah.
And they included making more time for myself. They included getting outdoors more, being more active, traveling more, reading more. And I've kept that piece of paper as a check to myself. And I slowly, I'm getting there with a lot of things. And what did that mean? It meant that I sat down and I researched all kinds of activities. What kinds of things have I not done in the past that, you know what, let's give it a go. So in the last 2 years, I've been learning to ski. I've been learning to ride a bike. But I wasn't running, but I'm now doing the Couch to 5K app. It's great, by the way. And if you're thinking
Wow.
of learning to run, like, give it a go. But
Mm.
I'm like, okay, these are things that changes that I want to make in my life. So, and so the other thing is, don't ever say, oh, I'm not like this or I'm not like that. And it's never too late to make changes.
Yeah, oh, this is all great. I mean, because my next question was going to be about the future, but already making a checklist, never saying it's too late, never saying I can't do that.
Absolutely.
You're right. And, believing in yourself. I mean, I've lacked confidence all my life. I can really relate to that. I think as women, we do, don't we? We lack confidence in ourselves, and, what you actually, what other people think of you and what you think of yourself is normally like this, completely different. And it's just, giving yourself a bit more of an easier time, not to be so hard on yourself. All of these things, these philosophies are just so important, Jansev, honestly. But most of all, I like the list. So out of all the things that you wrote, how many have you done so far?
There were 6 things there were 6 things on the list.
Yeah.
And apart from restart my diary, I'm doing all of them. So yeah, and I've decided I don't think I'm a diarist. I've given it a go a few times. And you see, that's the other thing, right? Don't be afraid to fail. Now, that's not an example of failure in that sense. If I've discovered keeping a journal is not for me, that's okay. Right, I gave it a go. I've stopped and started several times, but it's not for me. But a more general sort of, in terms of piece of advice, is don't be afraid to fail, because that's how we know whether we can do something or not. Is when you push yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's very relevant for youngsters out there who are under pressure with exams and things. Definitely for my children. I think, not being able to fail, not being able to fear failure is a very important thing, because psychologically that can really affect you and scare you and make you feel very, very anxious. And actually, it's fine. What's the worst that's going to happen?
Exactly.
What's the worst that's going to happen? Certainly. And it's through failure that you become successful anyway, and that you learn. So definitely right. We've got a few more comments. Chanel's put beautiful words. I can relate there. As always, good in bad. God never gives you anything he doesn't believe you can't handle. True. And I know it's been tough times at the minute, so that really resonates. Serpil, enjoying this interview so much and so very proud that we have such amazing young women like Jansev in our community. And Aleph has said such an important comment. Don't be afraid to fail. I mean, yeah, all positive. So it leads me to the very last question. I mean, we need another program, really, Jansev. So you're going to have to come on again and tell us about what you're getting up to, because I think you're a real inspiration. And thank you so much for coming on. What's the future for you? Big question.
A big question. I honestly don't know. Do you know, my life, I never planned it to turn out the way that it has. I don't think I ever imagined it turning out the way that it did. But I can't complain. It's I look back and it's, so like I said, in my 20s, I lacked confidence. I was a studier. I went to university. I started working. I did my job. I came home. That's what I did. And then I had the Labour Party on the side as well. And in my 30s, I started to come out of myself, come out of my shell. I started to discover life and understand more about me. And I've been on quite a personal journey since I turned 30. And so I'm not the same person that I was, sort of looking back over 10 years. And so I don't know where I will be in 5-10 years time, but I'm going to embrace it. Right? That's, in terms of 2 pieces of advice I'm going to leave people, is embrace life, go with the flow wherever it takes you. Right? If you know what you want to do and what you want to be, that's fantastic. Right? But I never planned any of as I said, the experiences that I've had. It's just I've fallen into it, and touch wood, it's all worked out sort of very well for me. And one other piece of advice specifically for girls and women is, don't ever let anybody say to you, that's not for girls. Right? Girls don't do that. It's like people say to me, why are you only just learning to ride a bike? And I can't answer that question, because it's something that you do mostly when you're a child, right? But I can only put it down to, my parents had 2 girls and they thought it was a boys thing, right? Nothing is a girls thing or a boys thing. Girls, go out there, try everything, and give the boys a run for the money.
Yeah, definitely. So boys can play with Barbie dolls and girls can play with cars and trains. I used to have a great big train track. I loved trains as a child, and I was quite a tomboy, and I used to draw on the Barbie doll. So there you go. Definitely, 100%. I mean, again, I agree with you, Jansev, and it's true. I love the fact that you said go with the flow. Yes, you can plan things, but at the same time, live in the moment as well. We forget to live in the moment, and I think that's so important. Yes, the 30s is a journey for women. I think what you're doing now is great, you know, actually, you know, having personal reflections and focusing on yourself, you know, because I suppose in the 20s you're getting your education, you're building up your career, so it's quite tough. But then once you've done that, then there's a lot to look forward to. So those people out there, the youngsters out there, it's tough, yes, at the beginning to educate yourself, to establish your career, but once you've done that, it's good advice to say, you know, go on that personal journey. Lots of people, Nora, saying great interview, Jansev. I mean, I think everyone's really happy with what's been said. You've been a great inspiration. We've run out of time, unfortunately, so you're going to have to come on again. But I think we've got to cover. Thank you very much for agreeing to come on the program. It's been absolutely amazing. You're a real inspiration, and I've taken on advice that I'm going to be, you know, doing in the next couple of weeks, especially that one about the media and, you know, reading up on people that don't actually think the same as you. I think that's a very good point. Thank you very much for audiences, for your family, for supporting the program, all the wonderful comments. Thank you, Jansev. It's been a pleasure. That's it from us from Eurogenç TV. Have a very good evening. Goodbye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Welcome, we are Bologna, calling newlyweds or those looking for a new bedroom set. Venti 5-door bedroom set is not only glamorous and modern, but has storage inside the bed. This bedroom set was £3,700, now £2,395. Bologna, we are here for you.